UFC returns to Brazil this weekend with an absolutely stacked fight card. This is one you don't want to miss. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you closer to the action. Right now, all new customers that bet $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings app right now. Sign up using my code Sonnen. The crown is yours. Staying on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds and method to victory. The more bets you combine, the more you can win. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, you can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy with a shot to win all sorts of prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers can bet just $5 on any fight and receive $200 in bonus bets instantly with promo code Sonnen only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Islam versus Khabib, I mean, that is always a fun topic, and nobody wants to see that fight. Like, how does that work? How do you have a topic that is always hot? The idea of these two and who's better. But if you were given your ability to actually know, which means them fight, none of us would want that. Like, we know their relationship, that would feel weird. This was very common. Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock. And Ken was the man, and Ken had perception, not to mention Ken was physically more imposing, and he was the older brother. Then all of a sudden, little brother starts to get some run, and there starts to be the talk. And it felt weird. I did not like it. I did not like when the two Shamrock brothers were going to get pitted against each other. There was a guy that was going to do a show. It was going to be called Brotherly Love. He was going to put only brothers against each other. Matt Hughes has a twin brother, Mark. They were going to fight. Matt Serra has a brother. They were going to be on the card. Kenny Florian and his brother Keith are going to be on the card. And the Shamrock boys are going to headline the entire thing. And that card never got off the ground. A gentleman who was a promoter didn't like shift and do something else. He never did any of it. But I do remember the idea and the concept, Brotherly Love, and it felt awful. It did not feel right. As much as that seemed like something, it wasn't. It wasn't something. There's massive college teams out there. Penn State comes to mind. Iowa comes to mind. Minnesota, some of the few teams, Oklahoma State, some of the few teams in the entire country that can sell out a wrestling event. If they do it once a year, like Penn State, they do it every single time. There's only a few teams that ever, under any circumstance, can sell out a wrestling match. But to find out who the varsity guy is going to be, there's civil war first. Right, it's teammate versus teammate. And you could do that as many times as you want. Those don't ever sell out. Even if it's the best team in the country with the absolute best drama and the absolute two best guys, there's just something about it that doesn't feel right. And when we do that with Khabib and Islam, right, like as much as I have just convinced you and got you to agree with me that, yeah, we would watch if Khabib and Islam fought, but we actually don't want that. Not knowing their relationship. Knowing that we don't actually want to see those two fight. But the idea of who's better does live on. Like if Javier Mendez ever gets asked this question, Javier actually answers the question to the best of his ability at that time. It is fascinating what he says. It is fascinating the way that he breaks it down. We try to get Daniel Cormier or Luke Rockhold, like guys that were in the room. Try to get Josh Thompson that saw it to speak and tell us what they saw. It's really interesting stuff. Now, I tell you this because Khabib and Charles Oliveira just missed each other. And this never works. Like, the way that sports work and the way that you keep them alive is the second the top guy is done, you raise somebody from the field up. And as long as that guy can hold that, you will start a conversation almost immediately that this new guy was actually the better guy. And as crazy as that will drive some people that were fans of the original, they don't understand the business stops if you can't do that. Like if the argument of LeBron versus Jordan doesn't exist, then basketball is conceding that when Jordan stopped, it peaked. You can't, it doesn't work. Okay? So, now stay with me here, because when Oliveira got on his run and he missed Khabib, there was two things that happened and they were fascinating. And you and the media did not make enough of it. And when that dialogue was out there that Charles was the guy, and where that was really unique is he and Khabib are very similar age, and it wasn't that Charles came on and was part of the next crew when Khabib left. Charles was there at the same exact time as Khabib. He just hadn't worked his way to that spot. So now the conversation is red hot. And now you turn to common opponents, of which there were two. Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and Charles Oliveira beat them by a combined 1 minute and 52 seconds faster than Khabib did. That was amazing. And nobody grabbed that. Like nobody, I don't know if they didn't have that number. I brought it to you guys. Perhaps it's not as interesting as I thought that it was. But nobody did anything with that. And it wasn't to prove that Charles was better than Khabib, right? They'd have to go head to head to prove that. It's to annoy the people that want to have the conversation and give it to Khabib. Like it is a major dent in the armor. And that is why Islam versus Poirier, that is what they're testing right here. We have a bar to beat Poirier. It was the second round, just over 7 minutes in. I just gave Charles his number versus Poirier, didn't I? I didn't just give Khabib's. All right, listen, as good as I am at it, even I need notes, but my point is this. That's what has to be looked at, and that's what has to be relevant, because if that conversation is going to live on, the only thing that we're going to have is common opponents. And that is where Dustin is fun, and that is where Justin is fun. In fact, Dustin and Justin may be a little bit more fun than other people that you could throw in there. And I just want you to know what it is that you're looking for. Dustin Poirier is never going to come out and go, yep, Chael's right. My goal out here with Islam is to go longer with Islam than I did with Khabib. He'll never back me up on that, but to a degree, like everything has a starting point. If you're an athlete of any kind, you've got starting points everywhere. Wouldn't matter if it's your bench press. How many times could you do 300 pounds, right? Well, there's your starting point. How fast did you do a mile? How fast can you run a 2-minute mile? Like those are all of your starting points. Then you hear about victories and you hear about moral victories. And nobody likes to talk about them because they're things that you get in defeat. But whether they want to talk about them or not, it doesn't mean they don't exist. And it's a very interesting situation. I mean, I feel as you could have an entire build around that. I feel as there's pressure on Islam and that he should be asked those questions. I feel as though when that fight's going on, these guys like to do watch-alongs, right? That they should have a stopwatch. They should have the Khabib clock running opposite the Islam clock. I think there's something very fascinating about that. And then I think when the whole thing's done, you turn to Islam and or Khabib and you say, how come your time was faster or not as fast as? Like, I feel like there's an entire story to that. And Charles Oliveira started to get over with a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people were starting to think that Charles was the absolute best. Plus, there was a reason why, like, he got his eyes fixed. And remember all of that? Even as late as I was to the party until I watched Charles in his last fight against Arm. When I watched that live and I was right there close, that's when I saw Charles Oliveira's greatness for the first time. And many of you had seen it before. But the fact that Charles had two common opponents with Khabib and Charles beat them a combined 1 minute and 52 seconds faster than Khabib, that's fascinating stuff, and it got around you. So now I'm going to bring it to your attention, because now there's another common opponent, and this is with King Khabib's heir apparent, Islam versus Dustin. We've got the starting point. Is it going to be over or under? Every week they do their whole show. Coach Longo would call in, hit it, boom, he's out. And I loved it. It was this great piece. I wish somebody would do that with Islam. That's it. Like Bahal Muhammad is very busy with podcasting, or O'Malley, right? Like somebody that's consistent and is out there. I wish they would do a weekly piece with Islam. You come up with what you're going to call it. Weekly take with Islam. I think he's very good. I think he is very clever. I think he is secretly humorous and charismatic. But it's a slippery slope with the ideology of many people from that team, where they are competitors first. They understand that entertainment is important, but there is such a gap between competitor first that comes with sportsmanship and honor, just like they're teaching the younger boys that want to be like them. Then there's a gap to the next, and Islam weighed in. I'm just explaining to you why you don't hear a lot of these things from Islam, but every time he speaks, it's something interesting. For example, what he said this morning, that the ideal opponent that he wanted is Justin Gaethje, but Justin just lost, and the only one left is Poirier, so that's who they're going to fight next. And Poirier has an obvious deficit in his game, and that's with his grappling, so that's what they're going to exploit. Wow, there's a lot on that. First off, your ideal opponent is Justin Gaethje. How come? Nobody wants to fight Justin Gaethje. Max Holloway just fought Justin Gaethje. Max never called for that fight. Prior to that, Poirier fought Justin Gaethje. Poirier didn't call for the fight. Gaethje did, just to remind you. Nobody ever says that they want to fight Justin Gaethje. Many people do it because they get phone calls and offered, and that's the way the wind has decided to blow, but nobody asks for it. So when he says, I'm talking Islam here, that Gaethje is there, meaning the team's ideal opponent, I would like to know why. I think you would as well. What do you see? Why him? What did he do? Is this personal? Share with me. He then said that Dustin Poirier has an obvious deficit in his game. Do you agree with that? He went on to say that it's the grappling, but without me telling you what he said it was, would you co-sign the statement, Dustin Poirier has an obvious deficit in his game? Will you co-sign that statement in any regard? I don't think you will. I don't think that you do agree with that. So, if they're going to fight, and the reason they're going to fight to further Islam's thought is because Circarian, who many of you say is the one that should get this, has refused the fight, of which is true. Circarian backed it up and said he didn't want to do it. But I'm just wondering, what do you do then? Like, there was a problem that came about in 2023 that if Chael had one wish going into the new year, we would find a way to not do what we did throughout 2023, which was we had multiple number one contenders at the same time. Chael the fan did not like that. Chael the fan love when a couple, 3 guys, 4 guys, if we're really lucky, see the writing on the wall and understand that from a logical standpoint, they could be the number one contender, but so could him and him. So now we're going to fight in the media. I like that. I think that's fun. I need clicks over here for what I do. I'm a little talking head just saying words into a microphone hoping that you guys will watch. But I need topics. And it becomes very easy to have topics when you have multiple guys fighting for the same thing that are never going to throw a punch. They're going to do it through the media. They're going to do it through calculating. They're going to do it through strategies. They're going to do clips and social media. They're going to make a video here and there, and these other guys are going to have a manager send out a text from here and there. Like, whatever it is that they can do, they're going to bring that best foot forward. I like that, and we take that away. We denut the ability to fight for and or need to fight for number one contendership. We take it away when we have 2 in line already. And we did that 3 different times in 2023. We had only done it 1 time throughout history, and then in 2023, we did it 3 times. In fact, the 1 time through history that we did it was at something called UFC 246, where Francis Ngannou knocked out Rosenstruck. Dana went to the press conference and said Francis is next for the heavyweight championship. And the reason that was different is because Stipe and Cormier was already signed. So now you've got Francis sitting right here. He's got to wait till these guys are done, wait for the injury reports, wait for the healing process, go through the bout agreements, the training camp, the build. And oh, by the way, the 6 months that took, which was, I think, ended up being 7, nobody else in that division called for number one contendership or called out somebody to fight for number one contendership. There was no reason to. The nuts had been chopped off the entire argument when this was already stated. So in this case, I don't think that there is a reasonable argument where Aram Sarukian doesn't get that opportunity when he heals up. I just don't think that anybody else is there that has done a good enough job. I don't think Gaethje and Gamrot are clever enough to work it out and find their way to each other to even make an argument. I don't think Max Holloway was clever enough to stay in that fight just to leverage it against what he wanted at 145. So, in that vein, we likely are to have Circarian. And if we do that knowing that Poirier is next, but knowing that Gaethje is the one that wanted, And we're going to honor this system. We're going to honor the system that is right there in front of us. And we have to honor it because nobody else is fighting for it. Nobody else is even coming for it. Right? It's like any job. If one person shows up for the interview and no one else shows up, even if you don't want this person, you're hoping this guy would apply, but this guy didn't apply. This guy gets the job, right? I mean, it's not like some kind of rocket science. But I can't be my usual dick of a self and come in and scold the 155-pound division. I can't do that. If we're going to have a number one contender who's allowed to wait because we've got the title match that is still to come, and now we've taken up the entire calendar year of 2024, that wasn't just the boys being inept that found a way to sandhag their own division. The balls were chopped off the idea of fighting for a number one contender because you already got two.